Hello and welcome to episode 12 of What Makes This Song Special. Thank you so much to everybody who has had the patience to wait a couple of weeks for this one. I was actually on holiday in Germany last week, another place that's very special to me and to my family. I spent a lot of time in Germany as a kid, and although we didn't officially live there, I feel like we did sort of live there at points in our life, and maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode, but not for today. Today's is, as you probably can see from the thumbnail, a little bit of a serious topic. A little bit of a serious one this week, a wee bit of a sombre one, but I'll try not to make it too downbeat and depressing. For anybody who's not watched the show before, I like to talk about a song and what the song makes me remember in my life. What does it make me think of? Why is it special to you? You can leave a comment. What makes the song special to you? I'll talk a wee bit about the singer, and then I'll do a part 2 where I'll do a cover version of every week's said song. So this week's starts in 2010. 2010, life was going great. Everything was perfect. I was married to the girl of my dreams. Was in the best health of my life, starting to make music at my full-time job. I felt quite blessed, obsessed with health and nutrition. I'd read every book on the subjects and trained every day, 5k runs every morning, intense martial arts sessions 4 times a week, lifting weights every day, playing football. I was 28 and in the best shape of my life. Muscles, six-pack, all the things that we sort of covet when we take out that gym membership. I was obsessed. And sadly, things were about to change. All those good things were about to change. So stay tuned. I'll go back a little bit. In my sort of naivety, I'd never really got the whole attraction with Bruce Springsteen. I know he's a very, very popular artist and loved by millions worldwide, but I thought he was a sort of middle-aged woman audience pop star. And I don't know what I based that on. I think purely on the fact that a couple of my mates from school had their mums liked him. And I thought, oh, Bruce Springsteen's some 80s pop star. Didn't really know much about him. I remember thinking of Dancing in the Dark and Born in the USA and not really loving the songs that much. I thought of them as sort of run-of-the-mill pop songs, and didn't really realise the depth of them or the sort of intricacies of them as songs, especially, I suppose, Born in the USA being quite political, and that kind of, when you hear it on the radio so many times and you hear that repeated Born in the USA lyric, it's easy to sort of not listen to lyrics and sort of not quite grasp what's supposed to be going on in that song. So I suppose he was brought to my attention quite late on. As I said, I was about 28 at the time, so late 20s. We played a wedding one night in St Andrews University. St Andrews is a great little town if you've never been. St Andrews is a fantastic little town in the northeast of Scotland. It's got one of the best universities in the world and the oldest golf course in the world if you're into golf. I've never played golf in my life, but it's a very Scottish sport, and so I thought I'd mention it. But anyway, the bride that night had asked us to learn Dancing in the Dark for our wedding, and as I was sitting learning it on the piano, I was coming up with a version on the piano, and I'm enjoying the chords and I'm listening to the lyrics, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a shame that it's such an 80s sounding production with the kind of synth. Oh, that's the Born in the USA, but the wee that one, another synth. So lots of synthy stuff that I was kind of aware of that he was, he'd written, thinking what a shame it was that it was sort of like an 80s production. See, I'm a bit of a sucker for real organic instruments. So I mentioned to one of my friends at the time who liked Springsteen, I said to him, oh, those songs would be so much better if they were 70s production with real instruments and no synths. And he said, oh, you'd maybe prefer his 70s stuff. And I thought, 70s stuff? I thought Bruce was an 80s artist. I had no idea he had 70s stuff. So all of a sudden I'm intrigued. And Lindsay and I were going on holiday the following week to Mexico. And I decided to jumped onto iTunes and bought and downloaded a couple of his early albums, 70s albums, Born in the USA, and I think his first album, which I can't remember the name of now, which is handy. But so yeah, I was interested, and I didn't listen to them on purpose because I quite often like to have an album that reminds me, or a song that reminds me of a holiday. So I thought, well, I'll keep them. They'll be songs that remind me of that holiday. And it must have worked because I'm sitting talking about them now. But so I waited and waited, and then we landed in somewhere in Mexico, Cancun. That was where it was. That was where the plane landed. We didn't go to Cancun because that was for like kind of young, cool party animals, and by 28 we were sort of starting to settle down a bit, and we decided to go to Riviera Maya, which is further down the coast from Cancun. But we flew into Cancun, and as bad luck would have it, there was a huge tropical storm going on. It was absolutely incredible. Never seen rain like it. So we come off the plane and it was bucketing down. There was like a foot of water. So we're just like wading through water in our flip-flops as if you're walking through a river. Got onto the bus, and I remember phoning my mum, and her and my dad were in Verona in Italy watching a Stevie Wonder concert, and they were telling me how great that, you know, it's like 40 degrees Celsius in Italy and everything was going great. And I thought, like any good Italian, I was like, we should have gone to Italy. Why did we go to Mexico on holiday? This was a mistake. Anyway, on the bus from the airport to Riviera Maya, where we were staying, Linz, as always, fell asleep on my shoulder. This is a tradition. You know, she always did that. Every train journey, bus journey, on any holiday, Linz always falls asleep on my shoulder. So I stuck on my iPod, and I started the Born to Run album for the first time. Never heard it before at this point. Stick on Born to Run and listen to it from start to finish as we drove for about an hour down the coast of Mexico, the Riviera Maya, beautiful coast. And on one side you've got these white sandy beaches, green ocean, sort of Caribbean type water and views. Incredible, absolutely incredible. And on the other side, on the roadside, you've got the worst poverty I think I'd ever seen. So you've got houses that are the size of somebody's, you know, car garage, that have got maybe a piece of tarpaulin that covers the front when it starts to rain. And we were looking at these people standing inside these houses where I was. Lindsay was sleeping, but I was watching these people, and they were standing inside houses, maybe 20, 25, 30 people inside a house the size of, as I said, somebody's garage for a car. Really sad, real poverty. And I suppose I knew poverty from, I've told stories on here before about different things that happened in youth, but real poverty that I'd never really experienced before. So, yeah, I'm listening to these songs in the album and honestly wondering how I've never heard this music before. How have I gone 28 years of my life and not paid attention to Bruce Springsteen? And as I passed through these poor neighbourhoods in the storm, I felt like the song titles were made for these moments. Like there was Thunder Road, Meeting Across the River, Born to Run, Back Streets, Jungle Land, and the music had like soul. It had energy, it was unpretentious, it had lyrical content that was worth pondering, it was genius, it was just amazing. Instant fan. I listened to those songs throughout our entire week in the sun, and the sun did eventually come a couple of days late, but it did come. And so that was an amazing holiday. We listened to, you know, Bruce Springsteen, or I did certainly, and just get completely overwhelmed by, I can't wait to get back to buy everything else that I haven't listened to before. And a few weeks after the Mexico trip, something really strange happened. So I woke up with a headache one morning, and the headache didn't go away for 8 months. It was an 8-month long headache for somebody who never got headaches. Strange, concerning. I also had like terrible pain in my rib cage, right through my rib cage. I couldn't, like, when I took a breath, it was really sore right through my back and my chest, and I became like out of breath walking up the stairs to our apartment. And none of this made sense considering my sort of outwardly perfect health, age, and lifestyle. Somebody who'd never smoked, not a big drinker, wasn't considered, a health risk. In fact, if anything, I was considered probably by my friends as a kind of gym geek who was obsessed with fitness and exercise. And after a couple of weeks of this headache that I had that didn't sort of dissipate, I started to worry and made an appointment with my doctor. And he sort of reassured me that it was stress related, that I'd been overdoing it, that I'd been doing too much, and there was too much going on in my life. So that made sense. I'd been training every day. I'd started 2 businesses. I started teaching singing, and I also started the wedding band. I was still working as a chef to pay the bills. So crazy amount of hours, still training, doing cardiovascular exercise and lifting weights and doing sport every day. And there were emotional factors as well that were going on at the time that I'll talk about in another episode. But so I felt relieved that the doctor thought, there's nothing serious going on physically. I think you're just, you've overdone it. You're stressed out. You need to let your body relax and it'll be okay. And I sort of hoped the symptoms would dissipate, but they just kept getting worse. New symptoms every week. Symptoms that were sometimes terrifying, and other times kind of chronic symptoms that were just a low level chronic, like tiredness and fatigue, joint muscle pain. It just ate at my positivity and at my mind like woodworm eats a wardrobe. It was just like eating away at my mind constantly. And I spent my nights on Google typing in symptoms every night. I couldn't sleep, and I would type in, all my symptoms and see if anything comes up. And obviously, of course, things come up in Google and they make you feel even more worried than relieved. So probably best not to do it, but it's very hard not to when you're experiencing all these strange symptoms and nobody really knows what's going on. So I visited the doctor every few weeks with new symptoms. I spent money that I didn't have on some of the most crazy alternative therapies that you could ever imagine. That, again, maybe for another episode, I won't go into all of them just now, but you better believe that some of the stuff was absolutely bonkers. And some of the stuff, when I look back in hindsight, like, I'm almost embarrassed to admit that I tried some of these ridiculous sort of almost snake oil like therapies, but only people who have been in that situation where you're truly desperate will understand why I did it. I think from somebody outside looking in, it's very easy to look at somebody trying crazy therapies and sort of think of them as being naive or gullible or stupid. But when you're desperate and somebody online in a forum says, I tried, this, I electrocuted myself once and it worked and I'm better now, you'll go and electrocute yourself. That's the reality of it, because we're desperate to feel good. It's one of our most, sort of elemental driving instincts is to stay alive, stay healthy, be healthy, feel good. And when you don't, you'll do anything to do the opposite. So I'm aware that I could make an episode of a couple of hours telling you about the crazy things. So I'm trying to condense things here. But a couple of years of fighting with a blindfold on ensued, and I tried everything to find an answer. I had to give up my favourite hobby, which was exercise. No more martial arts, no runs, no football, no lifting weights. Something that would have seemed completely unthinkable just a few months earlier. Like if somebody had said to me, you're going to have an injury and you're going to be out for 3 weeks and you can't do martial arts and you can't play football and you can't go to the gym for 3 weeks, I would have been, mortified, worried. Mortified is not the right word, but, I would have been, distressed at the thought of that. And here was me, months, years, 2.5 years at this point, And 2.5 years in, I couldn't exercise. I couldn't go up the stairs without being out of breath. I would work. I'd do a wedding and, feel like I had flu the next day. I would sometimes walk up the street and back, or play with the kids. Or when Luca was born, my oldest kid, when he was born, I'd take him to the park one day for an hour, and I'd come back and I would go for a sleep when he went for his midday nap. Exhausted, just from being such a healthy guy to being absolutely knackered just every minute of every day. And so 2.5 years in, I'll have to excuse the dry throat tonight. Too many late nights on holiday in Germany. I need to take my voice back. 2.5 years in, I finally got a diagnosis. A good friend of mine who was a doctor had an idea and said, look, you need to go to your doctor and ask for a Lyme disease test. And I'd never even heard of Lyme. And actually in all my Googling, all those years of Googling, for some reason Lyme disease didn't come up. And yet when he told me about Lyme, and I typed in Lyme disease, every one of my symptoms came up. And it made complete sense, but I had no idea what Lyme disease was. And for those of you who maybe are the same as I was, although it's getting much more press now, thankfully, Lyme disease is a blood parasite that you can get from a tick bite. So ticks are wee sort of 8-legged, I suppose they're arachnids because they're 8-legged. So not an insect, but they're like almost like wee tiny spiders, and they live in woodland, and they like to live under trees where there's moisture. And if you've been camping before, you've probably had a tick, and they sort of bite you to suck your blood, and they stick into your skin until you pull them out, or they feast for a while and then fall off. And sometimes you don't know you've been bitten. I didn't know I'd been bitten. To this day, I don't know when I get bitten. I might have been bitten once. I might have been bitten numerous times. It might have been in Mexico. I always think back to Mexico. Mexico was where I was just a few weeks before I had my first symptoms. But it could be that I was bitten as a child and just lived a really healthy life, so it never really affected me until I was doing too much. I was working too hard. I wasn't sleeping enough. I was burning the candle at both ends. And all of a sudden, like any parasite, what they do is they are opportunistic, and they'll wait till you're feeling low, and then they start to grow and multiply and take over. So I don't know when I got it, but I know obviously when I started feeling the symptoms of it. And I had some blood tests on the health service in the UK, and all the blood tests came back saying that was positive for Lyme. Now, 2.5 years on from symptoms is too late, really, to start a normal dose of antibiotics. So if you were to be bitten by a tick tomorrow and know that you've been bitten by a tick and start to feel ill and go to the doctor, they maybe give you a couple of weeks of doxycycline, which is an antibiotic, and there's a good chance that'll be enough to kill it, and that's fine. But when it's been in your symptom for months and years without any antibiotic treatment, then it gets into tissues. It's very complicated. I don't want to bore people with too many complications. I'm going to leave some links at the end where you can go and have a wee look at it if you're interested. But it can get into tissues. It hides in biofilm. It does lots of really fascinating stuff. It's a very clever parasite, as all parasites are intrinsically. So, it kind of taken over my body and made me feel really ill. So lots of different symptoms happening. I finally got a diagnosis, but it was kind of too late to do any sort of traditional type of antibiotic therapy. So by this point, I'm kind of left by the NHS and by the doctors and by the specialists to just kind of go off and deal with the symptoms, because there's nothing really we can do for you. And at that point, again, you're on forums, you're Googling things, and you're trying out. So all the things I thought I'd tried, there was another 1,000 things that I had to try. And again, maybe for another episode, I can go into all the different things I tried at that point, but crazy different therapies, spending hundreds and thousands of pounds of money that I didn't really have to try and get rid of this thing. And I had so many ups and downs, and the ups and downs have been incredible. Times where I thought that I was almost back to normality. I kind of said, I think I'm back to 80%, I feel okay. I can't exercise yet, but I feel okay. I feel like I'm not feeling as ill, and maybe soon I can get back to exercise. And then, a month later, just times where you just don't even know how you're going to go on the next day. Like, that's how much it hits you. There were times where I was told by medical professions that they thought I had multiple sclerosis. And I lived with that for a few months until I had a brain scan, and they told me that it was fine. Tested for different cancers, and you have to wait again months for results. So stuff that just humbles you and makes you realise how tough, we can be as humans when you're faced with your own mortality. Stuff I didn't think I'd be tough enough to deal with, before it happened. And I don't say that in a big-headed way to sort of, look at me sort of thing. It's more to make people realise that when bad things happen and you think you're weak and you think you're fragile, something inside you takes over. I could sit here and tell you all 1,000 things, 1,000 stories about the crazy things that happened in this journey. The loneliness of it, the fight to keep fighting. The only thing that gets you through is hope. You have to believe that something will work at some point and give you back your old life. And I haven't really been able to exercise or do many normal things now for over a decade. And yet in some respects, I feel lucky because I know people who have been bedbound by Lyme. I know people who are in wheelchairs, who can't work, who can't do anything, who are really, really ill. I'm still able to function pretty well. It's taken away a lot of my my hobbies. It's taken away my ability to be able to my ability to go to the gym or to go running or any of these things that I did love, and there were things that really helped me, even helped my mental health. So it's hard as well to not be able to do those things, but I'm considered one of the lucky ones, even though there are times where it's hard not to feel sorry for myself. But yeah, I felt it was apt to talk about this on the channel to raise awareness, and the timing of it is apt for me as I start another protocol tomorrow. I'm starting a new protocol tomorrow, which is my own protocol. I've been writing a book over the last few years about all of this, and I've decided to finally take my own advice. And so tomorrow starts another protocol where I'm going to try and do a few different things and try and find a way out of this nightmare. But and I'll keep you posted on how that goes. But the only thing I can do meanwhile is focus on the amazing things I have in my life, my amazing family, my wife and kids, my band, the fact that I get to play music for a living and talk rubbish on my YouTube channel to a few hundred people, the memories I've got, the places I've been. These things are all blessings that we have to be thankful for. They help make the bad stuff more palatable. And I've learned so much on this journey, and in some strange way, I think it's made me a better person. I think I'm more compassionate towards other people, and I try to think about what people might be going through before I make sort of preconceived judgments about them and their ways. The flip side, I suppose, is that I have no tolerance for weakness. So if you're able, get out and do it. Go to the gym, go for a run, lift weights, because there are millions of us in the world that have chronic things going on who would love to be able to go to the gym, who would love to be able to go out for a run tomorrow or to feel alive and play a sport or any of these things, and we're not able to for now. I'm not going to say for never, but for now. So think yourselves lucky if you can do those things and go make it happen. No excuses unless they're real ones. Or I'll fall out with you because I have no tolerance, as I said, for weakness. So anyway, that's a wee bit about Lyme. I thought it was important to talk about that. It's a very important subject for me and for many others. So Bruce Springsteen. We'll get to the song, this week's song. Bruce, students ask me over the years, a lot of my vocal students have said to me, how I try and get them to look after their voices and train every day and work on their scales to make their muscles, to make, the elasticity in the chords last as they get older and all these things. And then they say to me, how is Bruce Springsteen still singing at 70 years old after shouting and screaming his way through, 4-hour-long gigs for 50 years? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think it's every vocal coach that I've ever spoken to. We're all just in awe of the anomaly that is Bruce Springsteen's voice. He was never a great technical singer. If I'm ever lucky enough for Bruce to watch one of these podcasts, please don't take offence, Bruce. You're a legend, but, not a technically fantastic singer. Just a really cool voice, a really great vocalist, and there's a difference. We've spoken about that before on the podcast. 4-hour concerts, sweat pouring from every pore. A true rock star. He leaves everything on the stage every night. To me and to many others, he's a complete inspiration, a phenomenal lyricist, and I think a great guy. I read his autobiography a couple of years ago, and as much as most people come across well in their autobiography because they try and make out that they're some great person, but I really do. His felt genuine. I think he's a really nice person, a really good person, and vocally, I think vocally he got better with age. If you listen to the early stuff, he's a storyteller, and he's kind of full of emotion and charisma, and it's fantastic, but he's not an amazing singer. But he's never gone down the drugs and debauchery route. He's always stayed in shape. He's quite slim. He stayed in great physical health by the looks of it. He was never one for late nights, and I think that's why they called him the boss. His nickname was the boss, and he was always kind of business, let's get to bed now, it's time to go to bed. He saw it as his life passion, but he also saw it as a job, which is really cool. And I think people tend to forget that singing's a very physical thing. You need to train your voice like an athlete would train their legs and their core and their arms. I say this to my students all the time, it's important to do daily exercises to keep your voice working. Mine doesn't sound like that today, with this tired croak from too many late nights. But it has to, you have to think about it like an athlete would, their body, and work on these things. So, but there you go. There's Bruce. There's and the song. So I think when I think back, it's more about the album. But this song in particular, it's a very special song. When I listen to Thunder Road, or any of the songs on the Born to Run album, but in particular Thunder Road, and I think probably Jungle Land, I think of my bus journey in Mexico. I think of Lindsay, my wife, sleeping on my shoulder, and I think of being in the prime of my life. I think of being, I was in my absolute prime. I was a very physically healthy specimen, and we're all invincible until mortality comes along and gives us a swift kick up the arse. So I'm going to leave a couple of links to some Lyme charities that have really helped me at some low points, and if you get the chance, please take a look at the social media pages or web pages. I'll leave a few links, and if you can, donate a couple of coins to the cause. I promise that it helps research and just helping people in times of need. So sorry today's episode was a wee bit of a somber one, but I think it's important to experience all of the emotions in life, or we've never really lived if we haven't experienced them all, have we? So there's my wee story. The bus to Mexico, or the bus in Mexico, listening to Thunder Road, and stay tuned for part 2, where I'll do my cover of Thunder Road. Thanks so much for listening. Cheers.